25-year-old Isabella Romano stood before the mirror in her wedding gown, completely unaware that in 60 seconds, her entire world would shatter. In 2 minutes, a dangerous stranger would zip up her dress and whisper words that would change everything. In 3 hours, she'd discover the devastating truth about the man she was about to marry. And the secret hidden in her apartment would either save her life or end it. But right now, Isabella was just a hopeful bride, struggling with a zipper, dreaming of forever with a man who had already sold her to the devil. Isabella Romano couldn't reach the zipper. Her fingers fumbled behind her back, grasping at air while her reflection mocked her from the full-length mirror. The vintage lace wedding dress fit perfectly everywhere except where it mattered most, the long zipper running up her spine. "Natalie," she called to her maid of honor, laughing nervously. "I need help with this thing before I dislocate my shoulder." Her best friend sat on the velvet couch near the window of the Dallas Fairmont Hotel bridal suite, absorbed in her phone screen. Natalie glanced up with a warm smile, her dark curls bouncing. "1 second, babe. Let me just send this text to my mom." Isabella turned back to the mirror, studying her reflection. Her long auburn hair cascaded in carefully styled waves down her back. Green eyes bright with anticipation stared back at her. The off-shoulder lace design showed off her delicate collarbones, and the dress hugged her curves in a way that made her feel beautiful for the first time in months. In less than an hour, she would become Isabella Chen. Mrs. Michael Chen. Her heart fluttered with a mixture of excitement and something else she couldn't quite identify. Nerves, probably. Normal wedding day jitters. "I'm so nervous," Isabella admitted, pressing a hand to her stomach. "Do you think he's really the one? I mean, we've only been together 10 months, and he's been so patient about waiting until marriage. Not every guy would understand that." Natalie made a muffled sound of agreement, still typing. "Natalie, seriously, the zipper." A hand touched the small of Isabella's back. She froze. These weren't Natalie's delicate fingers. These were large, unmistakably masculine, worn through the thin fabric of her dress. The zipper began to slide upward with agonizing slowness, each inch accompanied by fingertips brushing against her bare skin. Goosebumps erupted across Isabella's flesh. A shiver raced down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The touch was deliberate, sensual, like whoever stood behind her wanted her to feel every millimeter of contact. A breathless laugh escaped her lips. "Natalie, what are you doing? Are you trying to get me in the mood for my wedding night already? Save some of that energy for." Her eyes lifted to the mirror. The world stopped. Steel gray eyes stared back at her. Not Natalie's warm brown. Steel gray. A man's eyes. A stranger's eyes. Watching her like a predator who had finally cornered his prey. He towered over her at 6'4", broad shoulders straining against a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. His dark hair was swept back from a face that belonged in a Renaissance painting, dangerously beautiful. A close-cropped beard framed a sharp jaw, and an expensive watch glinted on his wrist as his fingers completed their journey up her spine. But it was his eyes that made her blood run cold. Gray as storm clouds, intense as lightning. They stared at her reflection with a hunger that stripped her bare. The zipper fastened at the nape of her neck with a soft click. "Who are you?" Isabella's voice came out strangled. She spun around, pressing herself against the vanity, her heart slamming against her ribs. "What are you doing in here? Get out." The stranger's lips curved into a cold smile. When he spoke, his voice was low, controlled, the kind that didn't need volume to command attention. "Your groom's not coming, sweetheart." He paused, letting the words sink in. "I am." Isabella's hands gripped the edge of the vanity until her knuckles turned white. "What are you talking about? Where's Michael? What did you do to him?" The stranger didn't flinch. If anything, his smile grew colder. "I must say, I'm pleasantly surprised." His gray eyes traveled down her body with deliberate appreciation. My bride is even more innocent than I expected. Such purity. Such untouched beauty. The smile widened. I'm a lucky man. Ice water flooded her veins. Your bride. The words came out high, panicked. I don't know who you are, but I'm marrying Michael Chen today in, she glanced at the clock, 45 minutes. So whatever sick joke this is. Natalie. Isabella screamed, darting toward the adjoining room door. Natalie, help me. She burst through and stumbled to a halt. Four men in black suits stood in the room like walls of muscle. Professional. Silent. Deadly. One of them had his hand clamped over Natalie's mouth, her eyes wide with terror above his thick fingers. She struggled, but against a man that size, her efforts were useless. Isabella whirled back to face the stranger, who had followed her with unhurried, predatory grace. His hands rested casually in his pockets like kidnapping brides was just another Tuesday morning. What do you want? Her voice cracked. Michael, she screamed toward the door. Michael, help. One of the guards stepped forward, speaking in a clipped, professional tone. Mr. Castellano, the car is ready. We should be at the airport within 20 minutes. He glanced at Natalie, still struggling. Are we taking both of them? The man, Castellano, didn't take his eyes off Isabella. No, his voice was soft, almost gentle. Just the bride. No. Isabella lunged for the door, but a guard caught her around the waist. She kicked, screamed, her white gown billowing around her like a cloud. Let me go. I'm getting married. You can't do this. Her heel connected with the guard's shin. He grunted. His grip loosened. Isabella bolted. She made it exactly 3 steps. A hand like iron closed around her wrist, spinning her around. The world tilted, and suddenly she was airborne, thrown over a broad shoulder like a sack of flour. The scent of expensive cologne, cedar and something darker, dangerous, filled her lungs as she pounded her fists against his back. Put me down. She thrashed, kicked. Somebody help. This is kidnapping. Call the police. Castellano walked out of the hotel suite with the screaming bride over his shoulder, his stride unhurried, his expression bored, as if her protests were nothing more than background noise. 3 minutes later, they were in the back of a black Escalade with tinted windows. Isabella pressed herself against the door, as far from him as the confined space would allow. Her mascara had run in dark rivers down her cheeks. Her carefully styled hair was a mess of loose pins and tangled waves. The wedding dress that had taken her 6 months to afford was wrinkled and stained. Castellano sat beside her, calm as still water, one ankle crossed over his knee. The overhead light caught the sharp angles of his face, the strong brow, the aristocratic nose, the beard that made his gray eyes even more striking. He looked like a man on his way to a business meeting, not someone who had just committed a federal crime in broad daylight. This is kidnapping, Isabella spat, her voice raw from screaming. Do you understand that? You just took me from my own wedding in front of witnesses. You're insane. You're a wannabe mobster psychopath, and when Michael finds out. Castellano reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. Without a word, he tossed it into her lap. Isabella stared at it for a moment, then tore it open with trembling fingers. Photographs spilled out onto her ruined dress. She picked one up. Her heart stopped. Michael. Her Michael. The man she was supposed to marry in 30 minutes. He was kissing a woman, a stunning Asian woman in a red dress, outside what looked like a hotel. In another photo, they were walking hand in hand. In another, climbing into his car together, his hand on her lower back in a gesture Isabella knew all too well. The photos trembled in her hands. What is this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Who is she? Castellano's gaze was cold, clinical, watching her pain with detachment. Nobody important, he said dismissively. Just a girl your precious Michael has been sleeping with. One of several, I'm told. Isabella's fingers tightened on the photograph, crumpling the image of Michael's betrayal. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she swallowed the sob threatening to escape. Castellano leaned forward, his eyes locking onto her green ones with sudden intensity. But you, his voice dropped, each word deliberate, you, Isabella Romano, are far more interesting. He pulled out a slim folder from beside him, flipping it open with casual elegance. 25 years old. Works as a line cook at the rustic table on Main Street. Has exactly $800 in her bank account and $23,000 in student loan debt. Most of your money goes to supporting a boyfriend who, as you can see, has been entertaining himself elsewhere. He paused. And from what I understand, while you were saving yourself for marriage, he was sleeping with at least 4 different women. The photographs fell from Isabella's numb fingers, scattering across the floor of the SUV. Why? Her voice cracked. Why are you telling me this? What does any of this have to do with you? Castellano studied her for a long moment, those gray eyes revealing nothing. I've been looking for you for 3 years, Isabella. Tracked you from Chicago to Miami to Dallas. You're a hard woman to find. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. But I always find what I'm looking for. And today, I found you just in time. In time for what? Isabella demanded, anger finally overtaking her fear. Why were you looking for me? I don't know you. I've never. Your father. The words cut through her protests like a blade. Vincent Romano. He was my accountant for 12 years. Castellano's jaw tightened. And before he conveniently died 2 years ago, he stole $15 million from me. Isabella's blood ran cold. She shook her head slowly. No. That's impossible. My father left us when I was 10. I haven't spoken to him since. My mother died because of him, because of the stress, the heartbreak, the bills he left behind. Her voice rose. I have nothing to do with him. I don't know anything about any money. You expect me to believe that? Castellano's voice was quiet. Dangerous. I don't know anything. Isabella shouted. You have the wrong person. Where are you taking me? What are you going to do? Castellano let the silence stretch. His eyes traveled over her slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice dropped to something low and intimate. I'm taking you home. My home. You'll stay where I can see you. He leaned closer. Either you give me my money, or... Or what? She whispered. Castellano reached out, his finger tracing the path of the zipper from the small of her back to the nape of her neck. Isabella shivered, hating herself for the way her body responded. Or I'll unzip this dress the same way I zipped it up, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear, and you'll stay with me until I get what I'm owed. One way or another. The estate was massive. Isabella stared out the window as they passed through iron gates flanked by armed guards. The main house was all glass and stone, modern angles lit up against the night sky. More security than she'd seen at some government buildings. This isn't a house, she realized. This is a fortress. The driver opened her door. Isabella stepped out on unsteady legs, her wedding dress dragging across the gravel driveway. The Texas night air was warm, carrying the scent of chlorine and jasmine. A man stood waiting at the front entrance. He was enormous, easily 6'6" with shoulders like a linebacker and a face that looked like it had been through several fights. His dark suit strained against muscles that seemed almost cartoonish, but when he looked at Castellano, his scarred face split into a grin. Boss. His voice was surprisingly soft, with a hint of a New York accent. His eyes slid to Isabella, taking in the wedding dress, the smeared makeup, the tangled hair. His eyebrows shot up. I didn't know you were getting married, boss. Would have been nice to get an invitation. There was genuine hurt in his tone. Castellano's hand pressed against Isabella's lower back, steering her toward the door. "She's not my bride yet, Vincent." "Yet." The word sent ice down Isabella's spine. She shot Castellano a look that could have melted steel. He caught it and smiled, actually smiled, the bastard, as if her anger was the most entertaining thing he'd seen all day. "By the way," Castellano continued, guiding her past Vincent and into a foyer of marble and modern art, "Isabella is a cook. I'm sure she'll make wonderful meals during her stay with us." Something inside her snapped. "Oh, absolutely," Isabella's voice was sugar-sweet, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I'll cook for you every single day. I'll just add one special ingredient to every dish." She met Castellano's eyes without flinching. "Poison." Behind them, Vincent made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. Castellano's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or grudging respect. "Vincent," Castellano's voice was cool, "show our guest to her room." The giant stepped forward, gesturing toward a sweeping staircase. "This way, Miss Isabella." Isabella followed him up the stairs, acutely aware of Castellano's gaze burning into her back. The hallway was long, lined with identical doors. Vincent stopped at the last door on the right, pushing it open to reveal a room that made Isabella's breath catch. King-sized bed with white linens. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. A bathroom with a jacuzzi tub. Fresh flowers on the nightstand. Soft lamplight casting everything in a warm glow. It was nicer than anywhere she'd ever lived. And it was still a prison. Vincent lingered in the doorway. He glanced over his shoulder, then leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Between us, Miss Isabella, I'm on a strict diet. The boss has me eating nothing but grilled chicken and vegetables." He made a face. "If you could maybe cook something that tastes good but won't make me fat." Isabella stared at him. "Get out." The words came out flat. Exhausted. "Do you have any idea what your boss just did to me? He kidnapped me. From my wedding. I'm being held here against my will, and you want diet tips?" Vincent's expression shifted to something almost sympathetic, but he didn't move. "Italian girls," he said, as if that explained everything. "My grandmother says they're all firecracker. You'll settle in." "They all do." Before Isabella could ask what the hell that meant, he stepped back and closed the door. She heard the distinct click of a lock engaging. Her stomach dropped. Isabella moved through the room like a woman in a trance. The windows, locked, 3 stories up with nothing but a straight drop to stone patio below. The bathroom, no window, just gleaming tile and that ridiculous jacuzzi. The door, solid wood, and when she pressed her ear against it, she could hear footsteps in the hallway. Guards. This was supposed to be my wedding night, she thought, sinking onto the bed. I was supposed to be with Michael right now. But Michael had never loved her. Michael had taken money to look the other way while a monster stole her. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. A movement outside the window caught her attention. Isabella rose slowly, drawn toward the glass. The gardens below were lit by landscape lighting. A pool glowed an ethereal blue in the darkness. And there, emerging from the water, was Castellano. She forgot to breathe. He was shirtless, water streaming down a torso that looked carved from marble. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, defined abs that gleamed in the underwater lights. His dark hair was slicked back, emphasizing the sharp angles of his jaw, those dangerous gray eyes. 3 men in suits stood at the pool's edge, waiting. Castellano grabbed a towel, drying himself with efficient movements as he spoke to them. Isabella couldn't hear the words, but she could see his body language, the commanding gestures, the way the other men practically vibrated with attention. He radiated authority like a physical force. "He's beautiful," some traitorous part of her brain whispered. Dangerous and cruel and absolutely beautiful. And then, as if he could feel her watching, Castellano looked up. His eyes found her window with unerring precision. Even from 3 stories up, Isabella could see the smile that curved his lips. Small. Knowing. Like he'd caught her doing something she shouldn't. Heat flooded her face. She stumbled backward, away from the window, her pulse racing. Why am I blushing? Her hands flew to her burning cheeks. I'm not attracted to him. I can't be. He's a monster. But her body didn't seem to care. 3 hours. Isabella had been pounding on the door for 3 hours straight. Her fists ached, her throat was raw, and her knuckles had turned angry red. Let me out. She slammed her palm against the wood. You can't keep me locked up like an animal. The lock clicked. Isabella stumbled backward. The door swung open, and Castellano stood in the doorway, one shoulder leaning against the frame, completely unbothered. He'd changed into a dark gray Henley with the sleeves pushed up to his elbows, revealing tanned forearms. All that noise. His gaze swept over her disheveled state. I assume you want dinner. Isabella's mouth fell open. Dinner? Are you insane? I want to leave. Castellano pushed off the doorframe and turned toward the staircase. Dinner is ready. Come down. He descended without looking back. The audacity. But her stomach growled loudly, reminding her she hadn't eaten since yesterday. Pride or food? Her stomach won. Isabella followed him down, her bare feet silent on the marble stairs. The dining room was enormous, a table that could seat 20, set with fine china and crystal glasses. Candles flickered. The smell of food made her traitorous stomach clench. Castellano pulled out a chair. Isabella sat, refusing to thank him. He took the seat to her left, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Vincent sat across from her, his massive frame somehow squeezed into a chair that looked comically small. Let's begin, Castellano unfolded his napkin. Boss, Vincent's deep voice stopped him. We pray first. Castellano's jaw tightened, but he set down his napkin. Vincent extended his hand toward Castellano, then reached across the table toward Isabella, palm up, waiting. She stared at his outstretched hand like it was a loaded weapon. Castellano's hand moved toward hers. Isabella yanked it back. Don't touch me. Vincent leaned toward Castellano, his voice dropping to a theatrical whisper Isabella could absolutely still hear. Boss, Italian girls are like this. My grandmother still yells at my grandfather. They've been married 52 years. Castellano's gaze never left Isabella's face. That explains your issues. Vincent simply clasped his own hands and bowed his head. Dear Lord, thank you for this food. Thank you for not letting the boss kill anyone today, that we know of. Please help me survive this diet. And please give our new guest patience, because she's gonna need it. Amen. Before Isabella could process that prayer, a young woman emerged from the kitchen carrying a large pot. She was beautiful, olive skin, dark curls, curves her simple black dress did nothing to hide. Vincent's entire demeanor transformed. His scarred face softened, his eyes going warm as he watched the woman ladle soup into his bowl. Grazie, Sophia, Vincent lifted his spoon, tasted, and his eyes rolled back. This is the best soup I've ever had. I could die happy right now. Sophia's cheeks flushed pink, but she waved off the compliment before ladling soup into Isabella's bowl. Isabella took a careful spoonful. Her culinary instincts kicked in immediately. It needs salt, she set down her spoon. And the meat isn't cooked through properly. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Sophia's hand flew to her hip, her dark eyes flashing. Excuse me. This is my nana's recipe. I've been making it for years. Isabella lifted her chin. Well, I'm a professional cook, and I'm telling you it needs work. Castellano set down his wine glass with a soft clink. He turned that cold gaze on Isabella. "You're making friends quickly." His voice was silk wrapped around steel. "If you're going to act like a spoiled child, you can leave the table." Isabella's chair scraped against the floor. "Fine. I didn't want to be here anyway." His hand closed around her wrist before she could take a step. Not painful, but firm. Unyielding. "Sit." The word was quiet. Absolute. Isabella's empty stomach betrayed her with another growl. She stood there, caught between pride and hunger, his fingers still wrapped around her wrist. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered herself back into the chair. Castellano released her. "Sofia is an excellent cook. I learned to respect a woman's work when I was young." Something shifted in his expression. "My mother taught me that." He took a sip of wine. "But you're a cook yourself, aren't you, Isabella? Perhaps you could help Sofia improve her recipes." Sofia made a sound of pure outrage. "That will be all, Sofia." Castellano's dismissal was gentle but final. Sofia shot Isabella a look that promised retribution, then stormed back into the kitchen. "How long are you going to keep me here?" Isabella turned to face Castellano directly. Castellano lifted his wine glass. "You just arrived. How long you stay depends on the information you give me. I don't know anything about my father's money." "If you don't have any information," that cold smile returned, "then you'll work as my cook until you remember something useful." Vincent's head snapped up. "Wait, what about Sofia? She'll be the sous chef." "Boss, you can't demote Sofia. She'll kill me." Isabella didn't wait to hear the rest. She pushed back from the table and headed for the stairs, her pulse racing. "I have to get out of here." But even as the thought formed, she knew escape wouldn't be that simple. Isabella stood in front of the mirror, her reflection a stranger. The wedding dress was gone, replaced by clothes that had appeared on her bed while she was at dinner. Simple jeans, a soft cotton shirt. Someone had been in her room. She reached behind herself for the zipper she'd finally managed to undo earlier. It was stuck again. "Come on," she muttered, twisting awkwardly. "You stupid." The air shifted behind her. Cedar and something darker. She spun around. Castellano stood inches away. His gaze was fixed on her with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. Before she could speak, his hands gripped her shoulders and turned her around. She felt his fingers find the zipper, felt him work it free with a single smooth motion. The dress loosened, sliding down her shoulders. Cool air hit her bare back. Isabella's arms flew up to cover herself, clutching the fabric to her chest. Castellano didn't step back. "I pulled this zipper up," his voice was low, dangerous. "Now I'm pulling it down. Quite meaningful, don't you think?" Before she could respond, his hands gripped her shoulders and spun her to face him. She found herself staring up into those gray eyes that burned with something that made her skin flush hot. He leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. "Be smart, Isabella. I've tried to be civil with you. Believe me, you don't want to meet the other side of me." His hand came up. She flinched, but he didn't strike. Instead, his finger traced along her jaw, slow and deliberate. Isabella's breath hitched. "You're in my house now." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "You owe me your father's debt. You know what you need to do to be free." He pulled back, studying her face. "Now sleep. I expect you on your best behavior tomorrow." Castellano walked toward the door, but before closing it, he paused. Turned. Isabella stood frozen, arms pressed against her chest, her skin flushed, her breathing uneven. The dress pooled at her feet. His gaze traveled over her slowly. A ghost of a smile curved his lips. Then he closed the door. The lock clicked. Isabella sank onto the bed, pressing a trembling hand to her chest. His touch still burned on her skin. What is happening to me? She pulled on pajamas with shaking hands and crawled into bed. She would escape. She had to. But even as she closed her eyes, she couldn't shake the image of him from her mind. Those gray eyes finding hers in the darkness. That knowing smile. Morning came too soon. Isabella showered and dressed in the clothes provided, more jeans, a simple white tee. When she came downstairs, she found Sophia in the kitchen. Those pancakes smell incredible, Isabella ventured carefully. Sophia didn't turn around, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. Mr. Castellano likes pancakes for breakfast. I love them too, Vincent's voice rumbled from the doorway. But I'm on a diet. Isabella smiled despite herself. Can I show you a trick, Sophia? For the batter. Sophia's eyebrows rose. Curiosity overtook defensiveness. Show me. They worked together, Isabella demonstrating techniques while Sophia absorbed every detail. When the first batch came off the griddle, they were impossibly light, golden perfection. Castellano appeared in the doorway, and the air shifted. He wore a white linen shirt, charcoal trousers. His dark hair was damp. His gaze found Isabella immediately. Back to normal, I see. He studied her. So this is what Isabella looks like when she's not a bride. Isabella walked to the table and sat without responding. Castellano took one bite of the pancakes. His eyebrows rose. My God, Sophia, what did you do? These are extraordinary. Sophia flushed with pleasure, shooting Isabella a quick wink. Vincent waved his fork excitedly. Boss, Isabella taught her the secret. Sophia's hand connected with the back of Vincent's head. You're impossible. But Castellano wasn't looking at either of them. His gaze had slid to Isabella, and something passed through his expression. Approval. Interest. Useful already, he murmured. He pushed back from the table. This afternoon, Vincent will take you to the restaurant kitchen. It's Monday. You can help with preparations. Isabella's head snapped up. Excuse me. You heard me. You're not going to sit around while everyone else works. I'm your prisoner, not your employee. You're my guest who owes me $15 million, Castellano straightened his cuffs. And guests in my house earn their keep. He walked toward the door. Vincent will bring you at noon. Wear comfortable shoes. Then he was gone. Vincent leaned toward Isabella. That's a compliment from him. Basically a love poem. Isabella stared at him. That's deeply concerning. But her mind was already racing. The restaurant. Outside. If she could get outside, maybe she could run. Vincent was watching her with knowing eyes. Don't even think about it. The boss trusts me to watch you. Isabella met his gaze. We'll see. Two massive pots sat on the industrial stove. Isabella stood before them, wooden spoon in hand, staring at enough ingredients to feed 100 people. What is this? She turned to Vincent. A military operation. Special dishes, Vincent shrugged from his stool by the door. You cook, I watch. Doesn't this restaurant have actual chefs? They make the regular menu. You make these. Isabella studied the ingredients. Fresh ground beef, San Marzano tomatoes, aromatics already prepped. Two classic Italian dishes she could make in her sleep, pasta with meat sauce and braised beef in tomato sauce. She got to work. 3 hours later, both pots were ready. The kitchen smelled incredible, but Isabella was exhausted, sweat soaking through her shirt. She collapsed onto a chair. First he kidnaps me, now he's got me working like a kitchen slave. The back door swung open. Servers in black uniforms flooded in, lifting the massive pots. Vincent stood. Time to go, Miss Isabella. But then she saw it. Vincent turning to speak with one of the servers. His attention diverted. The back door still open. Isabella moved. She was through the door before conscious thought caught up with her feet, legs pumping, lungs burning, freedom so close. She stopped. The scene before her froze her in place. Tents had been set up in the alley. Simple canvas structures providing shade. Folding tables lined the space, and behind them, servers were ladling food from her pots into waiting bowls. The line stretched around the corner. Elderly men and women. Families with children. People in worn clothes with hungry eyes fixed on the steaming food. I cooked for them, Isabella realized, watching an old woman accept a bowl of pasta with trembling hands. The woman's eyes closed as she took the first bite, and peace washed over her lined face. Heavy footsteps behind her. Vincent arrived, breathing hard. Miss Isabella, there will be consequences. But Isabella couldn't move. Vincent, her voice came out strange, Castellano feeds homeless people. Vincent's grip tightened on her arm. We're leaving. The boss will be home soon. Angela let herself be guided to the waiting car, her mind reeling. Is he a good man wearing a monster's mask? Or a monster who sometimes forgets to be cruel? Isabella stepped through the front door, her legs still shaky. The image of those hungry faces haunted her. She needed to call someone. Her roommate. Her boss at the restaurant. Someone had to be wondering where she disappeared to. But her phone was gone, confiscated along with everything else. Sophia was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. Isabella approached carefully. Sophia, could I maybe borrow your phone? Just for 1 minute. Sophia's knife paused. She looked up. Miss Isabella, we all know you're a captive guest here. You're asking me to risk my job for a phone call that will absolutely be reported to the boss. She returned to her vegetables. The answer is no. Isabella wandered into the garden instead. The grounds were beautiful, but a cage was still a cage. The sound of car doors made her turn. Castellano strode through the main entrance, 4 men in dark suits flanking him. His voice carried across the foyer, sharp, commanding. He was giving orders, his jaw set in that hard line. His gaze swept the garden and found her watching. For a moment their eyes met. Then he looked away, dismissing her, and disappeared into the house. Arrogant bastard, she thought. But her hand had already flown to her hair, smoothing down wind-blown strands. She caught herself and froze. Why do I care what I look like? She followed at a distance, curiosity overriding caution. She tracked his footsteps to a closed door, his study. Voices filtered through. Too muffled to make out. She leaned closer. The door swung open. Castellano stood in the doorway. Before she could step back, his hand closed around her wrist. He pulled her into the study, kicking the door shut. Listening at doors? His grip was firm. That's a dangerous habit. I wasn't listening. I was just passing by. He didn't step back. If anything, he moved closer. And today at the restaurant? Were you just passing by when you tried to run? Isabella forced herself to hold his gaze. Why didn't you tell me I was cooking for hungry people? You could have said something. Charity isn't a performance. His voice was flat. You did your job. The rest doesn't concern you. He tilted his head, studying her. Then he leaned down, his lips brushing her ear. Or are you getting too interested in me? Isabella's breathing stopped. She could feel the warmth of him, smell his cologne. Her stomach tightened. Heat pooled low in her belly. No. She pressed her palm against his chest and pushed, stepping back. In your dreams. His low laugh vibrated through her. The next morning, Isabella found herself halfway up the garden wall when Vincent's shadow fell over her. Miss Isabella. She froze, one hand gripping the ivy. Slowly, she looked down. Vincent stood with his arms crossed. The wall is 12 feet high. You've made it about 4. Isabella dropped to the ground. I was just exercising. Aha. The boss said if you tried something, you'd be cooking for me and Sophia until he gets back. The punishment wasn't entirely terrible. Isabella spent the afternoon making tiramisu and lasagna while Sophia watched with excitement. Vincent hovered nearby, inhaling deeply every time she opened the oven. By evening, the three of them sat around the kitchen table. Sophia had pulled out wine, and something that felt almost like friendship settled over the room. So, Isabella twirled pasta around her fork. Castellano owns clubs too? Sophia nodded. Nightclubs, restaurants, some hotels. His father built most of it, but Luca expanded after he died. She paused. He was only 25 when he took over. What about his mother? She died when he was young. Cancer. Sophia's voice softened. He doesn't talk about it. Orphaned young. Inherited an empire alone. The next 3 days blurred together. Mornings in the kitchen with Sophia. Vincent's hopeless flirting. Something almost like routine. The fourth night, Castellano still hadn't returned. Isabella filled the jacuzzi, sinking into hot water up to her shoulders. Her muscles unknotted. Tension drained away. This isn't so bad, she thought. But the moment her eyes closed, he was there. Gray eyes. Sharp jaw. That infuriating smile. Her eyes snapped open. What is wrong with me? A week ago she'd been about to marry Michael. A week ago she'd thought she knew what her future looked like. All of it had been a lie. Comfortable? Isabella's heart stopped. Castellano stood in the bathroom doorway, leaning against the frame. He wore a dark suit, his tie loosened. His gaze swept over her with lazy appreciation. What are you doing here? Angela sank lower into the water. Get out. I just arrived home. He walked past her to the bedroom, laying a garment bag on the bed. Get dressed. We're going out. He checked his watch. You have 30 minutes. Then he was gone. Isabella sat in the cooling water, her pulse racing. The dress was emerald silk, short enough to show off her legs, with a neckline that plunged. Matching heels sat beside it. She stared at herself in the mirror. She looked expensive. A knock at the door. She opened it to find Castellano waiting. His expression shifted as his gaze traveled down her body. Desire, brief and dangerous, quickly contained. You look stunning. The words came out low, almost reluctant. Where are we going? One of my clubs. Important meeting. He turned toward the stairs. Try to keep up. The nightclub pulsed with music and bodies. Neon lights cut through artificial fog. Castellano moved through the crowd like he owned the place, which he did. People parted instinctively. Stay close. His hand found her lower back. Don't wander off. Isabella followed, cataloging exits out of habit. When had she stopped looking for escape routes? A woman materialized from the crowd, tall, stunning, in a red dress. She pressed herself against Castellano, kissing the corner of his mouth. It's been weeks. Where have you been hiding? Isabella's stomach clenched. The woman's gaze slid to Isabella, dismissive. Who's this? Castellano's arm curved around Isabella's waist, pulling her against his side. She's with me, Vanessa. Something cold flickered across Vanessa's features. She turned and disappeared into the crowd. Isabella tried to step away, but his arm tightened. Jealous? In your dreams. His low laugh vibrated through her. The private lounge upstairs was all leather and dark wood. 3 men waited, European accents, sharp eyes, serious businessmen. Castellano shook hands, made introductions. Isabella sat beside him, acutely aware of every time his thigh brushed against hers. "Your clubs are impressive," the eldest said. "But if we're investing, we'd want to see expansion. Perhaps a restaurant club hybrid." Castellano's expression didn't change, but Isabella felt him stiffen. "This is my brand. I don't change concepts on demand." The investor turned to Isabella. "The young lady hasn't spoken. Perhaps she has an opinion." Isabella's throat tightened. She glanced at Castellano. "She's not familiar with the club business," his tone was dismissive. "Humor me." Isabella swallowed. "I don't know much about clubs, but I know people." She paused. "People consume fast these days. They don't want to eat dinner and wait for the same place to turn into a club. They want separate experiences." The investor leaned forward. "Your customers are probably 20s to 40s. That age group is impatient. They don't want everything bundled." Her voice steadied. "If this is a club, maybe it should just be a club, but with a clear identity. Try to be both, and you end up being neither. But if you narrow it down, people stay loyal." Silence filled the lounge. The investor smiled. "Interesting perspective." Castellano's hand found hers under the table, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Monday morning found Isabella in the restaurant kitchen again. The pastry chef had called in sick. "Show me what you can do," the head chef said. "Something special." Isabella's fingers twitched with anticipation. She worked in focused silence, building layers in individual glass cups. The bottom was dark chocolate with espresso, bitter, intense. The middle was rose-infused cream, delicate, sweet. On top, a paper-thin caramelized shell that would shatter at the slightest pressure. Vincent watched from his post by the door. "Beautiful, dangerous, complicated." He nodded. "Reminds me of Sophia." Isabella bit back a smile. "It's called The Woman in Love." Vincent's eyebrows shot up. "So I was right. It is about Sophia." "It's called that," Isabella set down her spatula, "because it looks strong on the surface, but the most fragile part is hidden inside." Vincent was quiet. Then he reached for one of the cups. "Don't even think about it," Isabella swatted his hand. In his office, Castellano was reviewing contracts when Vincent slipped in. "Boss, that new dessert Isabella made. Customers are going crazy. One guy tried to buy the whole batch." Castellano didn't look up. "And? It's called The Woman in Love. She said it's because it looks strong on the outside, but the most fragile part is hidden inside." Castellano's pen stopped moving. For a long moment, he stared at the contract without seeing it. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth curved upward. "Interesting name." The back office door was half open when Isabella passed it an hour later. She'd been looking for Vincent and had wandered too far. She didn't mean to stop. Didn't mean to look. But the voices made her freeze. Castellano sat behind a desk, two men standing before him. Rigid. Waiting. The air felt thick. Dangerous. "You used my name." Castellano's voice was quiet. "Made promises I didn't authorize." The man on the left shook his head frantically. "Mr. Castellano, I swear I was just trying to." Castellano lifted one hand. The man fell silent. "You were trying to profit from my reputation without my permission." No raised voice. No threats. Just fact. Castellano lifted one finger. Two more men appeared, flanking the sweating man, gripping his arms. "Wait." The man's voice cracked. "Please, I can explain." "Take him." 3 words. The men dragged him out through a side door. No violence. No screaming. Just gone. Ice water flooded Isabella's veins. Her stomach dropped, and she pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. The remaining man bowed his head and slipped out. The office emptied. Then Castellano looked up. Their eyes met through the half-open door. Isabella's breathing stopped. She should move. Should pretend she'd seen nothing. Castellano rose, crossing the room in 3 slow strides. He pulled the door fully open. You shouldn't have been here. Statement or threat, she couldn't tell. Isabella's throat was dry. But I was. Something crossed his features. Surprise, maybe. She held his gaze, refusing to look away. Even as her hands trembled. Silence stretched. Castellano stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Were you scared? Isabella's heart raced. Yes. He studied her. But you're still here. Yes. The word hung in the air. Castellano lifted his hand, his fingers brushing her cheek. Isabella's breath stuttered. Then he pulled back. Go back to the kitchen, Isabella. She went, legs unsteady, skin still tingling where his fingers had been. That night, alone in her room, Isabella stared at the ceiling. If he could be that cold over someone using his name, what would he do to me for my father's 15 million? But he hasn't, she realized. He'd had every opportunity, and yet here she was, safe, fed, protected. Maybe he doesn't want to hurt you at all. She had no idea that tomorrow, everything was about to change. Castellano didn't come home that night. Isabella told herself she didn't care. But she caught herself glancing at the door 3 times before midnight. Why do you even care? She had no answer. The next afternoon, Castellano appeared in the kitchen doorway. Get dressed. We're going out. Where? You'll see. 1 hour. The dress waiting on her bed was navy blue silk, elegant and sophisticated. She put it on, studied herself in the mirror, and tried to calm her racing heart. They drove through Dallas in silence. When they reached Clyde Warren Park, Castellano parked and walked around to open her door. He took her hand, his palm warm against hers, and led her toward the fountain. Couples strolled past. Children played on the grass. The late afternoon sun cast golden light across everything. They stopped at the water's edge. Castellano turned to face her. His gray eyes held an intensity she'd never seen before. Isabella. His voice was low. You've been with me for 6 weeks, but I've known about you much longer. Her brow furrowed. I spent 3 years looking for you. After your father died, you disappeared. When I finally found you, I had you followed for 2 months before I made my move. Her breath caught. I know what time you wake up. Who you spend time with. Where you go when you're hurting. His jaw tightened. I know the bench you sat on for 4 hours the day your father died. I know you, Isabella. She couldn't speak. There were reasons I wanted you near me, the debt, the money. He stepped closer. But there's something else. Something that has nothing to do with any of that. He reached into his jacket pocket. I love you. He lowered himself to one knee. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a diamond ring caught the fading sunlight. Marry me. The world stopped. Joy and terror warred in her chest. But Castellano wasn't finished. This isn't pressure. I'm giving you a choice, a real one. You can say no. Stay here. Live your life. A muscle worked in his jaw. And I'll fly back to New York alone. It'll break me, but at least you'll be free. Tears blurred her vision. She looked at the ring, at the diamond blazing in the light. She closed the box. Luca, her voice broke on his name. Please stand up. He rose slowly, confusion clouding his features. She took the box and pressed it back against his chest. "Thank you for giving me a choice." A tear slipped down her cheek. "But my answer is no." His face went blank. Then pain flashed across it. "I thought we were in love. I can't marry you." The words tore out of her. "Not like this." "What does that mean?" "I want to stay here, Luca." Her voice cracked. "You said I had a choice. This is my choice. Why are you crying?" She couldn't answer. So instead, she kissed him, pouring every word she couldn't say into his mouth. When she pulled away, his eyes were still closed. Vincent stood by the car. His eyebrows shot up as Isabella sprinted toward him, tears streaming. She grabbed her bag from the back seat, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "Give this to Luca," she pressed it into Vincent's hands. "But only when you're in the air. Promise me." Vincent's face creased with confusion. "Isabella, I thought. It's complicated." She wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry." Before he could respond, she turned and ran. Luca didn't move for a long time. He stood at the fountain's edge, staring at nothing. The only woman he'd ever truly wanted had just walked away, and he had no idea why. The private jet climbed through the clouds. Luca sat in silence, the ring box unopened on the table. Vincent approached, his footsteps heavy. "Boss." He held out the crumpled envelope. "I promised Isabella I'd give this to you once we were airborne." Luca took it without a word. Inside, he found two things, a small flash drive and a handwritten letter. He unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky. Not Isabella's. "Isabella, my beautiful girl. If you're reading this, I'm already gone. I neglected you for years on purpose. Men in my line of work don't get to have families. I kept you and your mother at arm's length to keep you safe. If I'd stayed close, you would have been a target. On the flash drive, you'll find a bank account in the Cayman Islands. It's in your name. More money than you'd ever need. You know this money isn't clean. But I'm leaving it to you because I need to know you'll be okay. I can't tell you what to do with it. I can only tell you this, if you dig into where it came from, people will come for you. If you don't touch it, maybe you'll be safe. If you do touch it, the consequences are yours to decide. I'm not asking you to forgive me. Just live a better life than I did. Dad." Luca closed his eyes. "She knew all along," he murmured. A small, painful smile curved his lips. She hadn't run because she didn't love him. She'd run because she did. 2 weeks later, Isabella stood in her small Dallas apartment, staring at her laptop screen. The flash drive sat beside it. She'd plugged it in 3 times. Each time, she'd unplugged it without looking. $15 million. Her father's final gift. Her father's final curse. If she accessed it, Luca would know. He'd track the account activity. He'd come for her. If she didn't access it, she could disappear. Start over. Build the life she'd always wanted. But without him. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The restaurant on Main Street is for sale. $200,000. Thought you should know. V. Vincent." Isabella's throat tightened. She looked at the flash drive. Then at the text. Then at her reflection in the darkened laptop screen. "Who are you, Isabella Romano?" Her fingers moved before she could stop them. She plugged in the drive. The account information appeared on the screen. $15 million. Clean. Untraceable. Waiting. All she had to do was transfer $200,000. Buy the restaurant. Start her new life. Her finger hovered over the keyboard. One click, and she'd be free. One click, and she'd be guilty. One click, and Luca would know. Isabella took a deep breath. And made her choice. The restaurant was packed. Every table full, the waiting list stretching out the door. Isabella moved through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, plating desserts that had become the talk of Dallas. The woman in love was her signature dish. People came from across the state to try it. The bell above the door chimed. Isabella glanced up from the pass. A man in a charcoal suit stood at the entrance. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Gray eyes that found hers across the crowded restaurant with unerring precision. Luca Castellano. Her heart stopped. He crossed the dining room, his stride unhurried, his gaze never leaving her face. "Hello, little thief," his voice was low, dangerous, devastating. "Did you think I wouldn't find you?" Isabella set down her spatula with trembling hands. "I was hoping you would." His eyebrows rose. Surprise flickered across his features. "I used the money," she said quietly. "I bought this place. Built it from nothing." She held his gaze. "And I've been waiting for you to come collect your debt." Silence stretched between them. Then Luca smiled. A real smile, one that reached his eyes. "You're right. You do owe me." He stepped closer, eating up the space between them. $15 million. His hand came up to cup her face. Plus 6 months of interest. "And how exactly do you plan to collect, Mr. Castellano?" His thumb traced her lower lip. "I can think of a few ways. Starting with you putting on that ring you refused 6 months ago." He pulled the velvet box from his pocket. "And this time, I'm not taking no for an answer." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. But this time, they were happy tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Luca slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that made the entire restaurant erupt in applause. When they finally pulled apart, Isabella was breathless, laughing, complete. "You know," Luca murmured against her lips, "you're still the most expensive thing I've ever acquired. And worth every penny." "Every penny," he confirmed. "And then some." He kissed her again, and Isabella knew, this was what love felt like. Not safe. Not easy. But real. And absolutely worth the price. Which moment hit you hardest? Comment below. Or, would you have said yes to the proposal? Let me know, are you Team Luca or Team Runaway? Tell me in the comments. Rate this story 1 to 10. And, if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss our next romance story. Drop a comment telling us what you loved most about this story, and let us know what kind of romance you'd like to hear next, billionaire, mafia, small town, or something completely different. Your support means everything. Like this video if Luca and Isabella's love story captured your heart. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.